something, and we created a school. It's not a charter school. It's in partnership with the Department of Education. It's a traditional public school. Now, it's the principal. Regular New York City public school. A lot of people will hear about Eagle Academy, and they think that we're a charter school because they see young men in uniforms. They see all these innovative initiatives that we have, and people associate innovation with charter, as though there's nothing good going on in traditional public schools, and nothing could be further from the truth. And so we decided that we were going to create this school. I had already been a New York City school principal for several years, but I decided to leave that school and to move over to become the founding principal for the Eagle Academy for Young Men in the Bronx, which was the birthplace of the Eagle movement, if you will. Kind of like the Bronx, served as the birthplace for hip hop. Dr. Blizzy, you know what I mean?
Afrocentric approach to remembering of the ancestors. I've had an opportunity to be at one of your summer trainings, and we get up there, we get into our houses, and we do our chants, and we do our town hall, and it's just it's something that for the educators out there, if you don't know, you better ask somebody. Right? But now that we talk, because one of the things that you guys deal with is you deal with loss during the town hall. You sure. Remember the ancestors. People call out the name. You say Ashe. Now we're dealing with the loss of George Floyd. It's impacted the entire nation. Everybody's probably saw the funeral service the other day. I mean, the entire nation is impacted. What kind of conversations you guys have?
We've been having conversations on a regular basis, man. From the moment that we have had to go into this virtual space. That town hall that you talked about is something that we do every day at our schools, where all of our young men, before they step foot in their classes, we gather as a community. It's cultural, right? We basically wrap arms around each other to say we are, in fact, our brother's keeper. We pour libation into a plant every day. And what I mean by that is a half dozen students on any given day will come up. We don't call on anybody. Anybody who is on their heart to come up, and they come up in the center of that room, and we've got a plant. And they'll just take a cup of water, and they pour water into the plant. And in the moment of them doing that, they're asking their brothers and sisters to be with them, right? And they may say, my grandmother's really sick. She's really the woman that has raised me, even more than my mother. And I'm afraid that we're going to lose her. And it's been real hard for me. You hear them just pour out their heart, man, in front of all of their other classmates because they know that they're in a safe space, right? And then as they pour that water, they say, the entire group, does the African response, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. We are with you. We feel you, right? We do that, and we do a whole host of other things that we have carried over even into now, because at the end of the day, what school is about is connection. Students who do well are students who feel connected. They feel that they're part of some place. When students drop out or engage in all kind of negative behavior, it's because they don't feel connected to a place. So what Eagle does and does well is about how to build connection and make our young people feel like they in fact are part of a family, right? So now that we've had to do this virtually, we're still doing what we do. We still gather our young men in town hall. We just do it virtually. We're still pouring out libation. We're still having our chants. We still have our house competitions. Every student that goes to Eagle Academy is part of a house. That's a smaller subset within the school. And all the houses are named after iconic men of color, whether it's Paul Robeson or Muhammad Ali or Malcolm X or Langston Hughes, Thurgood Marshall. It varies from one school to the next. We have a school in every borough of New York City and one in Newark, New Jersey. And the houses are a way for them to deepen their connections with one another, as well as to bring about a level of competition from house to house. Because one thing that we know through the research, and many of us who have sons know, boys love to compete, right? And so if you figure out, but they don't like to compete one-on-one. They prefer to compete my group against your group, you see? And so when you figure out how to put that in a positive context, you can make some great things happen. So we are continuing to do that. We have our own weekly virtual village where we have conversations with our young men, and they're led by our young men, and they're in conversation across the Eagle networks. So you literally have young men from Eagle Staten Island, you know, in conversation with the young brothers from Eagle Queens and Brooklyn and the Bronx. And even those who are not actually in full conversation are listening to the conversation and are in fact are connected. So we've been doing that on a weekly basis since this pandemic has hit. And of course, our teachers are staying in regular contact with them to let our young men know how much we love them, how much we care about them. And then now all of a sudden, we have the George Floyd case. And so that is in fact a continuation for Eagles around the issues and the challenges that young brothers like them have faced. So George Floyd happens to be the latest name, right? But we have been talking about these issues of black men and confrontations with the police for a long, long time. It's part of the DNA of the work that we do at Eagle. But one of the things we tell all our young men is that they have to be resilient. You know, there's a lot of things attributes we want them to have, but resilient is probably the number one thing that this society is going to throw all kinds of challenges their way. But at the end of the day, they must be focused, they must be driven, that even when we get knocked down, we get back up and we keep on pushing. That's what our community needs. That's what we expect for them. There's a difference between being an Eagle and just being a young man who goes to the Eagle Academy, right? And so making sure that we're continuing to infuse those kinds of values into them. And right now, every day, all of these protests, everything, these are teachable moments for them. And we're continuing to teach.
Amens to what's being said here. Guys, get your questions ready, get your statements ready. We only gonna have for a short period of time, so we're gonna try to get as many questions as we can in. George?
Yeah, Dave, what's up, man? How are you, brother?
My brother.
Good to see you. Now, listen, first and foremost, I got a big town hall. I had the opportunity to go to an Eagle training the summer before last, and I definitely snatched that town hall up, took it over to Mile 11, and it actually rang bells throughout the community. So any teachers, administrators that are out there, that is something when Dave talks about it really bringing the culture into school, it having the students come in with something to connect with, and then setting the tone from the time they walk into the building. Doesn't matter what they went through, the night before or on their way to school. It actually sets the tone for when they come in for the rest of their day will work. So big up to you for that. My question is this, and it's a two-part question. This is different, right? We've experienced, unfortunately, killings, murder of black men and black women before. This one is different. And the reaction to it has been extremely different. We're seeing not just a reaction from one community, but it's really a reaction from what I could tell from a diverse community of people out there. So my first question is, why is this one different? Why are so many people, and now it's even in other countries, what do you think has been the catalyst for that? And then my second question is, and it almost goes back to what Dr. Blake asked, we were already struggling as school leaders, teachers, administrators, to engage in discourse around this pandemic with our students. Now we have this crisis of racial inequality that we have to talk about. What advice would you give to school leaders? Because we know it's going to be a lot of new school leaders coming in. A lot have retired that are on their way out. A lot of young ones, both teachers are running out of the system, so they don't want to come back to a pandemic. But what advice do you give teachers when having a serious conversation with their communities about race? It's often a tricky topic that some avoid. We don't go all the way in. So again, why is this one different, and what advice would you give to school staff about having engaging their community, whether it's parents, community members, or students, in conversations about race?
Sure. Yeah, so when we say it's different, you're absolutely right. We've seen these killings over and over and over. I mean, they're just numbing. They're debilitating. But this one has sparked something that's a response that's been very different. And I think there are a couple of reasons why this one has been different. Number one, we were all home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
people are not as distracted as they ordinarily would be. It's easy to just kind of turn the channel, move on. You're getting ready for work. You got other stuff that are going on. You say, "Here we go, another police shooting." Everybody is on lockdown right now. The whole world, essentially, has been on lockdown, right? So everybody got a chance to lean in on this in a way that was different than in the past, because we are all we're all home. We're still very busy, but we're busy virtually. But we got a chance to see, ordinarily, George, right? Most folks are at work. They don't have a chance to see these images all day, every day. They're seeing it all day, every day, and it's piercing their spirit. It's piercing their soul. And so I think that,
And no sports to distract them, right?
yeah, there's nothing else to distract them, right? So it's that's what's allowed the piercing of it to go even deeper and to resonate, to get the attention of everybody. Number one. Number two, because everybody's on lockdown, a lot of people are out of work. A lot of people can't return to work yet. They got a lot of time on their hands. The weather just broke. And so people got a chance to say, we're getting closer to getting back. Young people who are less concerned about this pandemic as it relates to their health are like, listen, we hitting the streets. It's not like they got to get ready to go to work tomorrow. So they got time all day, all night. Where are we rushing to? So I think it's a combination of those things that has made a huge difference. I think the big thing that we see differently this time is the amount of white faces that are on the front line. Whether they were agitators or peaceful protesters. A lot more peaceful protesters. During the civil rights movement, Dr. King always had white allies who marched along with the civil rights leaders. You need that. And what I think probably been happiest to see is the young white folk who have stepped out there to get out there with young black folk and to say, we don't have all the answers, but we know this is some bullshit. Like, what's going on here is ridiculous. And they recognize that they stand in privilege, right, based upon the way the system has been set up. But I think many of them are more conscious to recognize that privilege that they have been set up with, it can't stand the test of time. Woman said, I felt threatened, or I thought he said something to me, or he looked at me a certain way, and they will hang you from a tree. That has been the history of this racial assault that we deal with, right? So, George, when we talk about what do we need to talk to school leaders about, we need to talk to them about that. We need to understand the history of racial terrorism. And this was not 500 years ago. This was just a few years ago. This is not ancient history. And history that is not dealt with can repeat itself. That's how you wind up with Donald Trump, right? So we have to tell the truth. We have to have courageous conversations. We have to tell the truth to our children, because they don't know either. They just know they're angry and that they're victims. But many of them don't even know the power and the promise and the potential that they have. They don't know the greatness that lies within them. But I'm more concerned about how to systematize that now. So one of the things that I want to see come out of this pandemic that I'm going to be pushing for from a policy standpoint is we need to make sure that we have a fully developed curriculum about Black history that every student in New York City needs to be exposed to from kindergarten through 12th grade. Not just for the kids in the Black neighborhood, for everybody. Everybody needs to see. Everybody needs to bear witness to. Because without that knowledge, you don't even realize the contributions. You talked about the Boston Tea Party. Crispus Attucks was the first man to die in the fight for this revolution, a Black man. I'll guarantee you 99% of white children in America don't even know that. That's why you can put your knee on my neck and crush me to death. Because you don't think I'm worth anything. Because you don't even know who I am. When you see Drew Brees get up there and make those ridiculous comments that he made, he can make those comments and they fall back on this false patriotism around my grandfather fought for this country, and so I believe we got to be that patriotism for the flag, like we didn't fight.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because they don't talk about it. They don't realize we fought in every war that this country has ever had, side by side. We were there. But that story is not told. So when it's not told, you don't know. So therefore, when you don't know, you think all we are the negative images that you see on TV. Therefore, we are less than. Therefore, you are justified in putting your knee on my neck and taking the life out of me. Because at the end of the day, the school system that we went to for all those years never told me one damn thing about your worth. That has to change. Otherwise, it's just protests and we mad. But we got to argue and build for some institutional changes.
George, you got Dave Banks fired up over here, bro. He is on fire.
Fired up, man.
And as you can listen, as you can see, I mean, just think about it. This is the man who is out there talking to young men of color. And if you've ever seen, they say you know a tree by the fruit that it bears. If you ever engage a student or a alumni of the Eagle Academy schools, you see a sense of purpose. You see a sense of I know who I am. All the things that you're talking about in terms of, teaching our children who they are, making them purposeful. You see leadership, you see refinement, you see discipline, you see culture, you see, all of those things. You see it in the actual students themselves, and you can see why. Look at who's engaging them in this conversation, and from the leaders that I've interacted with from Eagle Academy, male and female, it has been a culture of this kind of excellence. I'm going to get to you now, Shady. I know you've been biting at the bit to ask a question. I just want to give. I always like to acknowledge the comments. There's a lot of comments in here responding to David Banks. Pioneer. Oh wait. So one says, it says, how do you think we should engage other communities like the Orthodox Jewish community and Asians that seem to be lacking in this movement? One says growth is uncomfortable in order to wait. I lost it. In order to grow. In order for us to grow and heal as a nation, we must be willing to have these uncomfortable conversations. Dean Johnson says, "Oh, my Knicks." Jay Passatino says, "Sell the Knicks. Dolan is the worst."
Right. I agree with that.
Jenna's mom says, "Absolutely." To J Rock, the status quo always pushes back. That's why we have to challenge it when it is abhorrent. President Barack Obama laid down the psychology behind this in his town hall Wednesday. It's available on YouTube. So, Dave, as you can see, and Jenna's mom said, preach. They love to say that they serve this country so that they can tell us what rights we are entitled to. It's done to justify them keeping privilege and work. Work the upper hand playbook. So, Dave, one of the things is that what we do on here is we're very interactive. We want to hear from our audience. We just have the conversation. Sometimes people come up here and just say, "I'm mad," and that's quite okay. But so we need to have an opportunity to express that and have an environment where people feel comfortable doing that. Shady Duke, he is the director of the East Flatbush Village Inc. organization. They've been doing a lot of nonviolent programs to kick off Gun Violence Week. Very active in the community. So, Shady, I know a couple of times you were like ready to jump in. So please go ahead and ask your question.
Mr. Banks, I have to have you in one of my town halls. You're phenomenal. I've seen you in passing before. It was my first time actually sitting down and absorbing what you have to say, and it's phenomenal. I think the way you approach the situation, has to be shared with everyone, right? I do want to pick your brain on some things, right? We have a system in which, even if we do get a curriculum that's black, not pro-black, but black education, right? We have an issue with the teachers. Not that they're bad,